I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
Welcome to Thoughtspeak, a podcast dedicated to two grown men diving back into the books of their childhood and seeing what holds up. My name is Coleman.
And I'm the other guy, Mitchell. And I can honestly say that we're going to have a super, super awesome episode right now. And there is going to be conflict, perhaps some resolution. Ooh, I don't know. There's going to be lots of arguments, I can guarantee, between the two of us. And I'm just going to say it up front. It's because the subject of tonight is book 46 of the Animorphs, The Deception, an amazing book. And if anyone says otherwise, they're wrong. And
See, I make one little comment about what I may feel about this book, and you're going off making it seem like we're about to have this big battle royale.
You know what?
Which is 100% true.
Yes! Yeah, let's do it! I mean,
first though,
we were super excited about the previous episode in which you gave a 4 and I gave a empathetic 5. But this is gonna be nuts. Okay, what are you gonna do? You wanna thank the Patreons first?
I would like to thank every single Patreon member and subscriber by way of you looking at your screen and thanking them by name.
That's the way I'm accustomed to doing it, my friend, and you're in luck. Just really quick checking. Oh, Daniel says, so it begins. Yes, we are live streaming once again, and you can check that out on YouTube.
Just anywhere on YouTube, you'll find it.
If you type in YouTube, anywhere, text document, whatever, you'll see us. Anyway, I am going to start.
If you go on, just to clear that up, if you go on YouTube and type in Thoughtspeak or Thoughtspeak Podcast, you will find us pretty quickly.
Just type. We do not have Andalites.
That won't work.
Hashtag. That won't work at all. Hashtag. I want that book.
We don't have enough subscribers to have our own channel name yet. But all coming soon. You know, the more you spread the word, the more you leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, the faster we'll be able to get that very special YouTube channel name.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the people that keep us running, keep everything going, are the Patreon subscribers. And as such, I am going to take some time and thank them very quickly. We've got some odd names on this list because it's Patreon and we don't get, full names. So right off the bat, we want to thank Toasty Flatworm. Let's say, oh man, my keyboard is weird in that every time I advance with the up arrow, it pages up instead of, scrolls up, so I'm sorry.
Maybe use your mouse, your computer mouse.
Fun fact, I have a new laptop, and there are not enough USB ports on it. I still need to buy one of those USB hubs, so I have to sacrifice my mouse whenever I do one of these recordings. Anywho, still want to thank Peter Schull. I want to thank Noah Troutman, Tim Aheen, Ari Scheig. Oh man, that one just confounds me. What is that? Ari Shag, okay. Amanda Mimic, Jeremy Baxter, Tomb Juice, Canicula, Josh Blount, Tony Bazak, Kendra, Ben Freeman, Jason Thompson, James Miola, Jennifer Baker, Kelly Brown, Kevin Koslowski. Let's also thank Andrew Walker, David C. Graith. It's hard to tell sometimes if people have paid lately or not. Daniel Martinoli for sure is with us. Nita Labrada Gaffaro. Hopefully we'll be tuning in later. Michael Blemick, Sundown, and no, it's Sundown. We don't thank you. Well, we thank you. You gave quite a bit of money. Steve Adams as well. All these people keeping the show afloat. Letting us progress on to the next stage of the Thoughtspeak podcast, some would say.
Oh, yeah. To give you guys a little hint at where this is going, and I'm sorry for you audio listeners, you won't be able to see this. I just picked this up today in excitement for what we might be handling in the near future. So, just to give you a little hint. And for the audio listeners, I'm holding up a new copy, and by new I mean used, of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. collected from folklore and retold by Alvin Schwartz.
If you had told me that you planned ahead to pick up your copy and hold it up, I'd have gone and grabbed mine from my bookshelf around the corner. But
Well, I wasn't planning that. I wasn't planning on doing that. But I had it right next to me, so went ahead and grabbed it. But that's just one of the mini books that we are planning for post Animorphs reading, I guess.
oh my god, absolutely. These books, a lot of us, I think, grew up reading them right along with Animorphs around that age. Those books all hold a special place in my heart. I know they were some of the earliest books I checked out of my library. And a lot of people don't know this, but the artist that does that really iconic, creepy art is from Minnesota. So, home connection.
Yeah, always good to see the local talent get big like that. I mean, we got Guillermo del Toro directing a new film based on just those stories. So I'm excited to jump in. I've never read them before. I knew of them. They're super famous, but I've never read the book, and excited to jump in and check them out. But that's still a little down the line. Today we got one of your, I think you're used to it, Animorphs, the Animorphs series. We're still reading those ones. So
yes, we are.
Many of you are Animorphs fans who found this podcast because you were excited about Animorphs, and we're not done with it. We're not done being excited by Animorphs. But, yeah.
I'm going to attempt to excite everyone in this episode. So, like we said, it's Animorphs number 46, The Deception, an Axe book. And interestingly enough, with this book, the order of narrators actually changes for the rest of the series from this one on. Little trivia for you, yes.
I didn't know that.
It used to be the order was Jake, Rachel, Cassie, Tobias, and Axe, and then after this one it switches to Marco. I'm sorry, Marco last there in that progression, and after this one it switches to Axe, Jake, Rachel, Tobias, Cassie, Marco.
Well, I think they really came here at the end of the series and went plot by plot each book. Who would be best to tell the story from? So, it makes sense that they changed it up a little bit. There was no reason to have a certain order to the books.
Well, there was when they started out. Otherwise, you would have had probably more books from a certain character's perspective. If they didn't actually have a release system, they'd be tempted to say, release a Jake book, Marco book, and then another Jake book. And then, you've alienated your female readers. A little bit, maybe. You probably
yeah, and I can see, like, if you got a Cassie book coming up, that's a certain type of story you're going to tell. So I can see how that might influence what plots they're going to go with or how they're going to do something. So, just so you know, before we get into talking about the book, you're going completely off your summary. I don't have it in front of me, so you're going to be kind of leading us plot-wise through the book. And I will comment and chime in, as I want to do.
I figured. That's usually my role. I like it. I'm kind of the DM of this podcast. I like to think of myself as.
I like that.
Quick question, though. You don't have my notes? You're not using them? Or you just didn't pull them up? What?
I didn't pull up in time. We're in the middle of the podcast, so we're gonna go full on that way.
How difficult is it to open up your Evernote? Whatever.
I'm not connected to Evernote anymore, so that's a whole other issue.
Oh, so I guess it is whatever note. No.
I loved using your Evernotes, but that's why I had you put them in the chat window and stuff so I could see them before. But that's neither here nor there now.
You're neither here nor there now. Okay, so then do you want to read the back of the book?
Yeah. Give 1 second. Why don't you set us up real quick with the what your thoughts are on the cover of the book and how that looks.
Oh, yeah, that's a thing. So, this cover is actually pretty flippin' unique, I would say, in that Axe is morphing a human. And what's more is it's like a human in some kind of suit, I guess it's a flight pilot suit, obviously, but, as a kid, you wouldn't outright recognize that as being a fighter pilot suit. Anyway, you see Axe morphing some other human right off the bat, and you're like, whoa, this is going to be a bit of a different story. The cover morph is not an animal. And the tagline on it is, the Animorphs have never met Visser Two until now. And it's like, whoa, new character? Woo! This is going somewhere.
Yeah. And it's interesting that, A, that little tidbit is on point with what the plot is. That's usually not the case. And B, I mean, yeah, we've seen other books where Axe is morphing something else, but to have Axe morphing human in a flight suit, that's pretty different. And I do like the coloration. It's kind of a green and like orange red. Yeah, it looks pretty nice.
No, yeah, the colors on this cover are really cool, but actually, if you check out Seropedia, they have the different covers, and the UK cover is actually pretty unique in that it is the same, morph transition, but they went with a little bit brighter of a background scheme. It's like this red with purple swirls, and it reminds me of like the old Adam West Batman, whenever there'd be an on-screen transition or sound effect. You know how it did the whirl and the fly? Yeah, it looks like one of those effects, but with Axe morphing flying at the camera.
That's awesome. I mean, that'd be great to see. Thank you for bringing us a little international flavor to this episode.
I really investigated Seropedia on this one because I frankly love this book so much and I wanted to find out more about it. And yeah, the UK cover struck me there as pretty funny.
Well, let me read the back of the book. Let me jump into the summary.
Sure.
So, the Animorphs and Axe have managed to contact the Andalite homeworld, but the battle's far from over. Visser Two has arrived on Earth, and he's not happy about the state of things. He decides the best way to take over Earth is to have the humans destroy the people and the land the Yeerks don't need. He decides to start World War III. Axe and his friends know that Visser Two means business, and there will probably only be two ways to keep him from destroying everything they know. Find a way to stop the war, or find a way to stop him. Forever. Now, that's pretty hardcore, because it implies they're going to just kill Visser Two. Just that's where we're at. It's kill or be killed.
Well, when the back of the book directly references World War III as a possibility, this isn't any beginning of the series kind of stuff. This is, the war is full on progressing now. And this book is a major progression of it.
Let me say outright, before we even get into the book's summary, in my mind, I felt the opposite. I felt the last book really progressed us forward into the end game, whereas this book could have been a ghost-written story somewhere in the 30s or 40s. Like, it didn't really play into the end of the series that much.
Oh my God! Really? Oh boy! We're gonna have some fights here, man. I can't believe you say that, but okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm putting my flag in the ground. But let's see if I'm wrong. Let me, convince me. Let's go into the book.
I shouldn't have to I shouldn't have to do any convincing. Just telling you what's going on here and how much I'm about to geek out. Like, if you don't feel like geeking out with me, there's something wrong with you, bro. But okay, so the under the flap picture, which again I can't see mine because again I bought another copy that has like the makeshift clear tape cover on it, so I can't actually access the flap. But again, through the magic that is Seropedia, I see that it's a scene from the book where they're on the jet tarmac, about to steal the jet.
Just real quick, Daniel is flipping out in the comments, I think taking your side. But I just want to point out, I will answer all of those in time, Daniel, and I have reasons for thinking all of those. I agree with you. There's a couple of those that are very in-game material, but
no, this is par for the course. This is exactly what I thought was going to happen, and I agree. Don't worry, Daniel. I'll sway him. We'll get this.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. Go ahead. Let's start into it.
Very well. And this book is called The Deception for a reason. I mean, this is like... it's my favorite Axe book, I think. Depending on what his next book is.
This cannot be your favorite Axe book. That's crazy.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. This one is just... Oh, man. This could be a Michael Bay movie. I don't like a good Michael Bay movie.
That's my problem with it. You just said exactly what my issue with the book is.
Dude, if Michael Bay made a good movie, kind of like the first Transformers, I guess, it could be this. Anyway, let's
So this
start.
boils down to, hold on, this is what the argument's going to boil down to. I think that this is a bad Michael Bay movie, and you think this is a good Michael Bay movie. Like The Rock versus Transformers, 5 or 6 or whatever they did before Bumblebee.
Yeah, no. But I mean, I'll present my case as I go, and like I said, I got a lot of little doggy earmarks here that I'm going to do a lot of dramatic readings for you all tonight. If you're tuning in live,
I'm excited.
It's going to be a good show. So, where do we begin? I know, at the beginning. And it picks up right where the last book left off, which, as you recall, they made contact with the Andalites finally. This is kind of, again, huge thing. We just discovered, humans discovered Z-space travel. Marco's dad did, and he's been liberated. We wrapped up the Visser 1 plot, and now we're making big contact with the main Andalite force, and it does not go well at all as far as the team is concerned. The Andalites are, as they've been shown in the past, really mistrusting, very doubtful, pretty arrogant, and they basically straight up question Axe's, alliance or allegiances at this point. They think he's siding with the humans, and they also think that they're trying to detract from their efforts, their war efforts on the planet Alteran. What was the planet? One sec.
I think you got it right.
Anati, sorry. Anati homeworld. The Andalites straight up think that these humans are trying to, divert the Andalite effort from that failing home war to come to the humans world, and that's not really the case or whatever. But they just ultimately get blown off, and it doesn't go well for them. So right off the bat, that's not doing anything for you. A little bit more Andalites, dicking the kids around.
No. I will absolutely say the beginning of this book is fine. How leading in from the last book and how exciting that book was, and how it was everything I was looking for in starting this end game. I'm perfectly okay with the beginning and how it starts out. No, it's really my issue comes when they go out to the sea, but we'll get to that.
Okay, yeah. No, actually, in fact, my only main criticism of this, I guess, is that it was really predictable. That, again, the Andalites, we've been shown numerous times, they're not really helpful. We don't think, certainly, that they're going to be instrumental to, ending this war just yet. And, it's honestly pretty predictable at this point that they're still unwilling to help.
Maybe they wanted one more book to really hammer that home, to get us used to the idea that the Animorphs, there's no help coming, remind us of that.
Yeah, that could be the case. And, just to raise the stakes once again, make us feel like we are relying solely on this team of humans for the war on Earth. In fact, so after that big inciting incident here, the book cuts to a little bit later where Marco is kind of chilling out with Axe and Tobias in Axe's scoop, and they have made this makeshift kind of listening in on Yerk transmissions devices on one of Axe's little computers, and they happen to hear this snippet of a Yerk transition, and it's about the new Visser 1 and his Operation 9466, and that enough was alone to pique their interest, but they decide they need more information. And so I think maybe I would say that this beginning part is a little bit of the weakest part of the plot, I guess, because they spend a little bit of time on how they need to hack the NSA, and it actually leads to a pretty important scene as far as continuity is concerned, because Axe ends up breaking Ciro's kindness in a way.
I thought that was actually interesting. Yeah, I thought that was interesting, and I like how they did that. But the hacking and the NSA thing and then making a big deal about it, we've kind of already seen that before in a few books, doing some similar things, and didn't do much for me here.
No, I agree. Anytime they talk about, like hacking or doing anything computer related, we just kind of accept that he can do anything they need. And so it's very much used as a plot device to kind of scoot the plot along a little bit quicker, So let's see. Oh, one of the first little dramatic readings I got for you here is just from when Marco, Ax, and Tobias are chilling out in the scoop. And it is about war and like how the Yeerks have decided to, move the war into the public. So let me just figure out where I want to say.
I'm excited for these dramatic readings. You said you have so many of them, which I cannot recall a single thing in this book that needed a dramatic reading.
There you go. Here's a cool little nugget from Marco that is actually pretty relevant to today as well. A lot of these books, I think, were very prophetic almost, or maybe just history tends to repeat itself, but this stuff is still relevant today. Marco glared. I'd bet $1 million if I had it that if the average guy in the street was told he'd better get ready, there was going to be a major war, he'd just laugh. He wouldn't even believe a full-scale war was possible anymore. The average person is too content. Would you prefer a general state of panic? I said. It was a rhetorical question. My point is just that people are complacent. All-out global warfare is a thing of the past. That's what people think anyway. No one knows, or no one wants it, no one's ready for it. And who's going to believe Earth is about to be attacked by aliens from outer space? They'd think a call to arms was just a publicity stunt for that show Roswell. So, Marco,
I do have an issue with this statement in general, because I've thought about this a lot, and I do think people are kind of complacent, but nobody is ready for a world war to start, and obviously the aliens is a whole nother subject matter, but as far as like a world conflict, a world war, no one was prepared for the first one. People hadn't been to war in a century on that scale. So no one. It was young kids, people not prepared at all for a war who went into World War I. And the only reason World War II was any different was because World War I was so close to it that there were still people who served in the first one who then served in the second one. So I don't think anyone's ever ready for a conflict at this scale. It's how they are prepared and jump into it then that matters.
Okay, yeah, I can see your point. I was also only half listening as I scouted out the next section that I wanted to read.
Thanks. Thank you for that.
Well, you're there to fill time while I decide what next to talk about. So,
is that the podcast? Is that our podcast format? I've been wondering for a while.
Thank you for that, buddy. So we've discussed how they're chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, and I'll listen to some Yeerk transitions outside of the school.
When a couple of Yeerks who were up to no good started making trouble in the neighborhood.
Exactly. This is what you come here for, people. We've been over that they have heard this transition. They're like, oh no, Visser 1 is up to something. And who is Visser 1 now? There's a lot of callbacks to previous books, in fact, which is kind of nice. Let's see where...
Visser 1 is in Marco's mom, or Visser 1 is in the new Visser 1 who was Visser 3?
Well, they question who it is. They even state, like, I can't believe that they would make Visser 3 into Visser 1 after, what he's done. So they're a little bit doubtful, but, I think we all kind of suspect that it is going to be Visser 3 that has made the new Visser 1.
Which is really why they needed to introduce Visser 2 at some point in this end game, because it's like, well, why wasn't Visser 2 next in line to go to Visser 1,
I guess, yeah, I don't know. And that's why we haven't met Visser 2 before, because Visser 2 was off-world. Visser 2, honestly, was probably the guy who was working on the other planet's war.
See, I always pictured Visser 2 as like this high-level bureaucrat who he has such renown as being the number 2 because he's running things back on the Yeerk homeworld or something. But they really threw that thought process down the drain with this book.
I guess so. But they needed a semi-big bad, I guess, to introduce here in the final books. Well, anyway, after this discovery, they're on their way to like regroup with the team, and they discover, or they're talking about. Now my own notes are confusing me.
Oh no! If we don't have your notes, we got nothing. So, Animorphs is a series about 5 young children who can morph into animals.
Thanks, Coleman, for that save. No. They figure out that Visser Two is coming to Earth for this big military operation, okay? And when they're talking about what they're going to do, they have a piece of information that are like coordinates, and X quickly figures out a couple of things. They heard about this Operation 9466. Well, X figures out 9466 is, of course, Esplin 9466, which is Visser 3. Did you catch that?
I did. Just now. No, I caught it in the book as well once they explained it, because I don't remember Visser 3's Yerk's name by heart. You know, he's Visser 3. He's the bad Andalite.
I know. Only the hardcore fans remember the numbers.
Oh, I don't think you were among those who are like, oh yeah, 9466, yeah, Visser 3. What's Visser 1's? The original Visser 1's Yerk name. Go, right off the top of your head.
I don't know. Oh, if you gave me time, I could search through my list and find it, but I'm not going to.
Or Google.
No, my list is more trustworthy.
Yasplat 4822. See, I would just made something up.
Okay, so once they discover that these coordinates are actually latitude and longitude and dates, they're like, oh my god, it's today. The prom is tomorrow. We've got to get going. And they figured out that the coordinates are this military base that's out at sea, and it's a long distance, right? So they have to take a little break here, and Jake tells the team basically that there are no more rules, right? Another cool thing here I just wanted to point out is that Tobias recalls the time travel adventure from one of the previous Megamorphs books, meaning that it is basically canon that Jake died in that alternate timeline, and all that stuff happened.
Yeah, and you get a nice little scene where they're ready to give up the rules of war so easily, where Cassie's like, hey, we've kept these things and these morals this entire time. Why would we give them up just because we're close to the end? Which, I mean, I understand Jake and their argument of, well, now we're just going to do whatever it takes to win, but that's what you've been doing this entire time. I mean, it really hasn't. I think there's some merit to her argument here that if they care about morality and how they act in war, you should finish the fight like you started it if you're going to hold to those morals. If you just want to win, then just go ahead and win. I mean, there's a lot at stake here, but I thought that conversation could have even been longer.
Oh, I kind of agree with you, sort of, but I guess that's why I'm going to read it right now, because it's so awesome. So they're talking about how how do we get that far out to sea in less than a couple of hours? We don't have a morph that's going to do it. So Jake says, finally Jake spoke. His eyes were dull, but his voice was firm. Things are different, he said. From now on, we take what we need. We do what we have to do, no matter what the consequences. Jake, Cassie began. There's only one morph that'll get us thousands of miles out to sea in the time we have left, he added. Human. Yes, Rachel thrust a fist in the air. Her face gleamed with pleasure. Finally, extreme Yerk butt kicking. I did not express my opinion on the matter. And then, you've got even Cassie here. I thought this book did an excellent job at adding to Cassie's doubt about what they're doing, and she truly starts to feel like she is a character that is just being dragged along, literally only doing what she has to, like bare minimum. Because she even says right here, Jake, everyone, come on, we've gotten this far without totally losing it. By following the rules of basic humanity, no one can deny that. And then, Marco again plays devil's advocate and kind of does what he does. He's very blunt and honest about it, and he sees the direct path to the course of action they need to take. It's just great that already the team is kind of becoming fractured here.
Yeah, and I mean, you get both sides of the argument. I really do think up to this point, as long as they weren't doing it for fun, they shouldn't have had any qualms about like stealing a car or doing anything else. Like those things, the stakes are that high that I think morally you could justify those things. But what we're talking about now is like, it's what we've been talking about this whole time. Is morphing a human right? Is there anything wrong with that morally? I never saw an issue with morphing a human personally, because you're like creating a new person every time you morph. And I guess you could have similar arguments about like cloning and morphing, like what you're creating a person each time, then you're killing them just by morphing out of that morph. But if they're willing to morph dolphin left and right, I don't see there should be any issue morphing humans.
No, yeah, and I kind of agree with you. Morality is a very, very subjective area.
Well, look at it this way. Is there anything wrong in your mind with Tobias morphing back to human and then morphing out of it to go back to Hawk when he's done? Do you see anything wrong morally with that?
Absolutely not, because he was the original owner of the body, and it's just him having a return of his previous DNA.
But what he's doing is no different. It's very different than Cassie. No. It's no different than Cassie morphing a person. Now, if she takes that person and then goes and meets that person's like husband or something, and like, like talks to him or tricks him or something. But
Tobias is morphing his previous body. So it is a slightly different.
But the question, the moral question of morphing human is creating a sentient life and then taking it away while morphing out of it. You're having a smart sentient brain. That's the issue that they brought up when they originally morphed dolphins. Is it right to morph something sentient because you're taking control of a sentient mind?
That isn't or never was previously yours or under your control, which is not the case with Tobias.
You're mixing up the arguments, because that doesn't really matter that he used to have that body. We're talking about morphing any human. Is there a moral obligation or any problem with morphing any human because you're taking over a sentient mind? Now, if you think about it in Tobias's, if you take it into Tobias's account, it's him taking over his previous body, which he's just filling in the mind gap. He's actually the thought process, the thinking, the brain of that body. So if you don't have a problem with Tobias morphing his previous morph, his previous human form, then you shouldn't have a moral problem with anyone morphing a husk of another human, because they're the brains of the operation. There isn't another human brain there. That's why it's different from a Yeerk taking a host, because they're the brain.
Okay. As I said, morality is subjective. It's complicated. I just now tuned back over to the stream and saw like there's a bunch of people and everyone's talking, and welcome U.S. Dutch Kitty. It's good to have you with us.
Yeah, they bring up a great point in the chat. If you've ever had a problem with Axe morphing a human, period, that's no different than what they're doing now, because they'd have him over for dinner, or like, hey, we want to go to the mall and hang out, so Axe morph a sentient creature and take over it for a while. There's really no difference.
Hey, sometimes you just have to go to the mall to eat cigarette butts.
Yeah, Axe was forcing this human morph to eat inedible objects and even carcinogens. Come on.
Oh, yeah, totally. Bad stuff. Hey, while we're on the topic of morphing humans and whatnots, another cool trivia fact here is that this book marks the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st times that the Animorphs acquired and morphed a human that they hadn't already previously had. And Axe has acquired his 11th human by this point. That's some stolen DNA right there.
Yeah, I mean, he's got quite a zoo of humans in his morphing cadre now. So
he's stored a lot of Pokemans in his PC. That's for sure.
Bill's PC. Anyway, so after this moral discussion, now we're getting on way to the aircraft carrier, correct?
Yeah, I had a more stuff that I wanted to read between Jake and Cassie, just because it's really good in this book, but it's like probably like a full page, so maybe we should just skip it, I guess.
Yeah, let's get to the action, like this book wants us to.
We can. So this is, oh man, I love this scene too, because their plan is crazy as far as like, I mean, it was literally presented as a crazy plan from Rachel a couple books ago when she went and stole the airplane and crashed it into the Yerk pool. So that's their plan again, basically, is we need a jet that can get us out there. And the only way to do that is to sneak onto this military, Air Force base, take care of some of the pilots, incapacitate them, acquire them, morph them, and get the jet. And it's just kind of a treat, I mean, to see them doing something so brazen and so bold and it's a very different kind of mission because they don't know if their controller's there or not. They don't really want to kill the humans, obviously, and they don't really want to be seen by them. Axe even approaches them a little bit more differently and kind of interacts with them a little bit more nicely before taking care of them instead of just, sneak attacking them, whatever. It's just a cool little scene, and to top it all off, Axe has Rachel along with him because she's the only one crazy enough to actually, climb into the cockpit of the plane with him, which was very fitting. The rest of the team morphs, flees, and hides out on him.
Which we can all agree, I think, that they're dead the second they take that jet off, right? There's no way that Axe's experience controlling bug fighters in any way prepares him to fly a jet. They're a very complicated piece of machinery.
They do the classic explanation that's good enough where, they get into the cockpit and Axe has like a paragraph of investigating it and is like, oh yeah, this is very primitive. Oh, I could definitely, like that explains it all. And it's fine. Yeah, just whatever.
Just because it's primitive doesn't mean you know which switch, turns on the right buffer. Ugh.
You don't need to worry about that kind of thing. Not here, anyway. And yeah, they take off and they don't get caught, despite they are led on to and
real quick, I've got to address Daniel in the comments because apparently I'm fighting everybody on this episode. Daniel, I would say that bug fighters being a more advanced technology and having to be adapted to Yerks and the many bodies that pilot it probably has more auto functions, as we've seen in past books. They have auto docking, auto piloting, so being a more advanced machinery and Axe being at least somewhat familiar with your technology, it's probably much more complicated for him to jump into a jet than control bug fighters.
I like Daniel Martinoli's comment. Axe could be a small village all by himself. And he could if he can mix and match all those various human DNA components like he can with the original team he acquired.
Also, I'd like to give out whatever awards we give out to fans watching us on the live stream for U.S. Dutch Kitty dropping Independence Day reference. That's all I want out of our fans. Just constant ID4 references.
I'd be happy if you even filtered out the Independence Day and just gave me just concentrated Goldblum. That would be fun.
Yeah, we just a gold. I don't know what that hand maneuver was, but
it was filtering the liquid of Independence Day. See, it goes through the top, and then the gold. Drips out like a thick musky mead.
I would start a Jeff Goldblum podcast right now. I would announce it on the air. I could fill years of content with Jeff Goldblum's body of work
if we had time. But we don't.
We don't.
Because I'm trying to save the world by convincing everyone of the greatness of this book. Doing a bad job.
We're doing a terrible job. So they're flying in a jet plane. don't know when they'll be back again.
Thank you. And this is cool, too, because I guess I don't know how well they thought this plan out, because as soon as they get the jet in the air, they're like, so, we can't land this thing, right? Gonna kind of have to crash it.
Now that I appreciate it, because landing a jet on an aircraft carrier is one of the hardest maneuvers someone can do in any airplane. So I appreciate that they just decided to crash it.
Yeah, totally. It actually made a lot of sense. So they can't, obviously land on the thing. That'd make no sense. And they're able to crash land in the water, eject out quick. Everybody demorphs, goes seagull, gets onto the ship in time, like we knew they would. So this is the USS George Washington. And I think that's a real ship. I'm not sure. But a little element I really appreciated and thought was adding to somebody's character is the level of details that Jake studied about this ship and all of the military, Navy, Air Force information he picked up just for this mission. There's a point where, they're all seagulls landing on deck, and Marco and Tobias just keep asking him random questions like, what kind of fuel does this thing use? How many sailors are on this thing? So-and-so. And he's like listing off answers like a computer to the point where Rachel and Cassie are just like, oh, boys, nerds. And even everything Daniel Martinoli learned about aircraft carriers came from this book.
Let me just drop a little factoids on you.
Are you going to mention your brother?
What?
Oh, I was going to say, are you going to mention your brother who is a submariner? Namor.
No, yeah.
Namor style.
If we were talking subs, I'd be able to throw some stuff at you. But no, the USS George Washington, commonly known as GW, is a 1,092 foot long, 257 foot wide, and 244 feet high supercarrier, and can accommodate approximately 90 aircraft and has a flight deck 4.5 acres in size. It was sponsored by Barbara Bush and was ordered December 27th, 1982, and just in 2017 went into a 4-year refueling and recommissioning where they fix it up, they switch out plates, they kind of modernize it a little bit.
So that's that's like our main ship, right? Our biggest ship, our biggest baddest ship. That's like our Gundam.
I think we have.
That's our country's Gundam right there.
We have quite a few aircraft carriers. I think we have 17 aircraft carriers flying around. So this is a pretty old one, 1982. Most of our aircraft carriers were commissioned in the 80s and early 90s. But I think we have a couple that went into production in the 2000s. So
okay. Anyway, it's a big ship, and a lot of the plot once they're on the boat focuses on figuring out Visser 2's plan, figuring out who Visser 2 is. There's a lot of treachery, deception, because they don't know which humans amongst all the flight crew and sailors and everything are controllers or not. Again, common problem, but now it's like super concentrated to the ship that they're on, so it's a very dangerous, heightened sense of danger kind of mission, especially since the ship just crashing in the ocean several miles off has put Yerks on board on heightened awareness, whereas all the other regular civilian soldiers or whatever, I just kind of think it was a training error or something. They sweep it under the rug.
Well, yeah, and a ship this size, there's thousands of people who are just on this ship and different communities and different... people don't know each other super well, so who knows how many Yerks or what is going on here. Plus, they're part of a battle fleet right now in the book. In the book, there's also some battle cruisers. There's probably some support ships. Probably a nice little fleet who's part of this book story.
Possibly. I don't know. So... like I said, the mission revolves around just figuring out what the Yerk plan is. So they all kind of split up and go their own way. Jake tells them, if you're going to morph a sailor, make sure you get his uniform and make sure you don't stand out, go where this guy goes, whatever. And Cassie's quick to point out, yeah, but let's try not to morph humans. Yeah, let's try, only if you have to.
Now, here's my first big problem with the book, other than the issues I've had so far. This is very, like, there's not a lot of organization to what's happening in this book. They get on there, they kind of throw down the rules for how they're going to interact with soldiers and stuff very quickly, and it kind of just throws you in, which I'm all for sometimes. But this book is so muddled and chaotic, and it's not in a good way where it's like, oh, action scene after action scene after action scene. I really think this book's kind of all over the place with what's going on. It felt very much, and I don't mean this sounds like just a dig to make a dig, but it felt very much like the Atlantis book, where once they got into the city of Atlantis, it's hard to figure out like where they were and where they were running to and what the complications really were. Yeah, this is just kind of all over the place. And they were constantly repeating themselves and facing the same problems over and over again, and it just felt like the writing was all over the place.
Yeah, no. I feel like maybe they did that to add to sort of the like franticness of the situation, because a lot of this is Axe just sort of, like you said, moving about the carrier, interacting with his team, and sort of trying to figure out this very generalized plot. You know, Visser Two here, military, bad, something, World War III.
And I get it. Like, a lot of the things they're doing in this book is reacting to things that are happening. But I wish that the things that were happening to the boat could have been structured better so that the reactions were more interesting. They were kind of just going down this hallway and then going down this hallway and, oh, we're about to be caught in our morphs, let's hide in here and let's go. It was just, really was like super chaotic.
Yeah, very much so. Especially when, as they're going around the ship, the Chinese start to attack, supposedly, right? They feel like explosions kind of rocking the ship, and this is when sort of Axe starts to piece together, like, you know, he asks Cassie, who are the Chinese? And Cassie's like, well, you know, there are other, basically the other world power besides us. And this is where Axe pieces it all together, and he even says, Cassie, we are witnessing an elaborate setup. The Yeerks have just instigated a world war. And that's like, I don't know, I'm going to say it, feel like maybe this should have been a Megamorphs book.
Yes, I agree with you completely. I agree with you 100% that this should have been a Megamorphs book. Not just because I always want the Megamorphs books.
I know we say that a lot.
But I'm saying that specifically to my main argument with this book is that it is a ghost-written book. It's not written by Kay Applegate or Michael Grant. At least most of the parts aren't. They thank a ghostwriter for it. This book feels like it should be a Megamorphs book, or should be one of the regular ghostwritten books, because its plot doesn't play into the end game. Other than the few things they're talking about, like the morality of, you know, we're close to the end now, what should we do, blah, blah, blah. Besides those things, obviously, and the Yeerks coming out in force at the end of it. Most of this book could have been a side plot, just like a regular ghostwritten book or a Megamorphs book, where, oh no, the world's at war if we don't stop this one thing. And then they stop it, and then everything's fine. Like, this doesn't progress the Yeerks coming out to humanity. This doesn't progress the Animorphs families being in danger, other than how normally they're in danger.
Hey.
That's why I'm saying this book it's not as important as, like, the last book.
We're getting to it. I will just say we're getting to it. Okay? Hold your horses.
We're getting to it? That's your argument? We're getting to it?
Mm-hmm. By the end of this book, we're getting to it.
Well, sure. I'm just saying, like, this book, you could take this out of the end game. You take this out of the book into the series, would make zero difference.
It would make all of the difference as far as the team dynamic is concerned.
And Daniel,
all of the difference to Axe.
Hold on. Daniel Martinoli says that we're not technically in the final story arc. And yes, they don't say countdown to the end yet, but the marketing materials from the last book on say that we're in the countdown to the end.
Yeah, weird.
So technically, from Scholastic's point of view, we are in the end game.
Right. No, yeah, it's a bizarre way that they've arranged this. I agree with you there. And perhaps you're even right. Because the Yeerks are not able to accomplish all-out war in this book, it is postponed for a couple of books. So,
yeah,
there you go.
Now I will give
Now
up to
you
Daniel
view that as not affecting the plot, but that's not the case.
No, I do say that's not affecting the plot. Now, I do agree with Daniel when he said earlier, now, there is a part where Axe really defies Jake in this book, and I feel like that's important to the end, because like you said, the group is starting to splinter a little bit.
Walk it back.
No, I'm pointing out one great thing that he said, is that this is, towards the end, they are starting to fracture. We were talking about that, he was talking about it. That's true. This book plays into that. But again, you could take this book out of it, and Axe still does some messed up stuff towards the end of the series that could have taken the same role.
We're getting to it.
Okay.
I'm bringing him around, people, and we're getting to it. So
okay, well, let's continue on.
As you know, this thing goes. After enough running around under the ship, once things start to advance here with the attack on, supposedly, they do manage to tail a well-known controller, Chapman, who's there. Why is he there? Gotta be a yerk.
Vice principal of the aircraft carrier.
And then something random came out of the air and hit Chapman. I love that old joke we had. It's been a while since I brought that back up.
Yeah.
It headed straight for Chapman. Oh, Chapman's here. So
Melissa's on the flight deck running around.
through tailing him, they figure out about this Admiral Carrington who's kind of running the whole operation, you know, and they tail him, and of course figure out that that's Visser Two. It's not that surprising. After tailing him into a little room, they kind of have a confrontation with him, and this is where we find out that not only is this dude like batshit crazy, he's all about starting World War III and like, we're done with this war with the humans. You know, we're just gonna blow stuff up, and then we're gonna reap, you know, the benefits of the chaos that it creates.
Well, so one thing I do think is interesting about this book, and maybe might bump my score a little bit, you do get a third perspective on how to conquer Earth in this book. So you've got the original Visser 1's perspective of a slow infiltration. You have Visser 3 who's saying all-out war. And then Visser 2 is yet another option. Manipulation through, them being at war with themselves, us humans being at war with each other, and weakening the Earth enough to be taken over easier. So it is a totally new path to taking over Earth that I find interesting. And that probably did come from the Applegates. But I don't think the writer really jumped on that.
Possibly, but there is a reference to the Nazis where Marco says, I'm half expecting to hear him belt out a yerk version of that old Nazi standard. Marco said, you know, the future belongs to me. Which I guess I haven't heard the song. Yeah, well, Marco, where are you hearing this stuff?
He pays attention to history, all right?
His dad's like playing it at home.
Marco's darker home life.
His Hitler worshipping father. Oh, and we just come to like him so much in the last book.
Did we? I thought he was pretty annoying in the last book.
I don't know. He seems like an alright guy. I'd probably chill with him.
Chill with Marco's dad.
Yeah, why not?
It's the weirdest thing either of us to sit on the podcast.
Well, anyway, after this confrontation with Visser 2, figure out his plans, like, World War III, we thought we'd stopped it because we gave the order to the one guy to cancel the attack, the incoming attack. So that was a success, but the bigger problem is that this crazy-ass Visser 2 is still around, and, they have him under control for a brief moment, but this is when the bug fighter reinforcements show up, and everything just gets blown to crazy kingdom come. And I make the comparison of Michael Bay movie, but that's really bad, honestly. It is. It just evokes an image of, like explosions going off all over the place, and it's not really like that. Honestly, I think this is one of the coolest effing moments in the entire series so far, with actual alien bug fighters, what we the reader and the Animorphs have been struggling with this whole time, are flipping attacking the biggest American, war base that we have. That's humongous. This is a alien invasion that they the government will be, aware of and struggling to contain, right?
Oh, yeah, and I agree. Like, this is cool that this is happening. In concept, I don't think it's, like, executed perfectly. And by perfectly, I mean, like, excitingly. I don't think at any point during this I'm like, oh, wow, this is finally happening. And there's other parts of the series to compare it to where they do that well. And even I'll admit, I'll be watching a Michael Bay movie, and, there's parts of it that are... The first Transformers movie, I think, has some great scenes and some great action. It doesn't mean that the 2 through 5 aren't just absolute trash. Even if it entertained you for a minute, it doesn't mean overall you felt like you got something out of it, or this was worth, a really high score. And I swear to you, I'm not just crapping on this book to crap on it. I honestly was so disappointed after the last book, how great that was. And the battle scene at the end of that book versus this one, night and day. Last one, there were stakes. You cared about what the characters were doing. You could visualize where they were in the space they were in within the Yerk pool while that fight was happening. I thought it was laid out super well. Whereas this one, you can't even keep up with it barely. It's so haphazardly written. I don't think it's as exciting as the concept is.
You've activated my trap card, sir, because I've got a readathon here for you that really moved me, really powerful stuff that I'm about to bring up to you. But first, I want to tell you about Dutch Kitty's comment. He said, I just realized that this is almost the same plot of a Doctor Who episode, Aliens of London in World War III. Which was probably, I would assume, after this book was written. Is that right? Because that sounds like a newer Doctor Who episode.
Aliens of London, World War III
that's New Who.
Doesn't sound like Matt Smith. It sounds like Capaldi, maybe? Dutch Kitty, help us?
I'm not sure. I think it might have been Matt Smith. It'll take a bit for him to answer here, but...
2005. So 2005 would have been... is that Tenet?
Yeah, that's Tenet.
That's Tenet, yeah.
No, not Tenet. God.
Eccleston,
yes.
Ah!
You threw me off there, buddy. Anyway, I'm going to read this passage for you. This is great. So this is right after the bug fighters have invaded, and, everything is going to chaos. As I said, the sailors and personnel that are on the ship that are actual, human sailors are like, holy crap, like, what are these unidentified... These are actual UFOs coming down and attacking us. They're very confused. Suddenly, they're in a war with aliens. And, you have other humans that are controllers that are lurking around trying to search out for the Andalite bandits. One such guy, immediately attacks Axe upon seeing an Andalite. Their big weakness, their tell, is always the Andalite scum, or whatever they scream at them for some reason.
To be fair, Andalites have the same weakness.
Yerks! Get them! But, so here's a little reading from when all this chaos is happening, and Axe is trying to desperately get back to Visser Two, who ran off. This is funny. I'll just start from right here. I followed. At the top of the ladder-like stairs, I halted. My Andalite body is superior to that of humans in many ways. However, as recent experience had confirmed, it is not ideally suited for ascending or descending the stairs aboard a human aircraft carrier. No choice. Time was running out and I had to be mobile. I took my chances. Approached a rather tall young man in a purple float coat. Asked him politely for the temporary use of his genetic material and his outer layers of clothing. Fortunately, this young man was one of those who had realized we meant them no harm. Therefore, I was not forced to subdue him. The young man grinned. Dude, I'm honored. Borrow away and go get that alien scum. I acquired another human and immediately began the morph. Boom. That, I just got goose pimples reading that. That is like fucking...
Yeah, doesn't that guy...
Axe...
Didn't that guy get his, head blown off in, 2 seconds?
No, because he morphs him and then he runs away. But
no, he morphs. No, he morphs and then he sees him on the deck fighting later, and the guy gets killed.
Oh yes, you're right. He does see him later. That's true. So that's powerful stuff. This is the first human outside of the team that Axe has really had one of these kind of connections with, and I think it really even goes to show how much he's grown a little bit, because he does all he can. And the guy says Oh, it's actually later. I'm going to read that part later, too, when he's dying. So, like I said, I get that, you felt like this is chaotic and rushed, but I felt it was very appropriate given the situation. This is a real alien attack on our U.S. government, a big deal. And full on alien attack on a ship carrier that our heroes are stuck on, looking for one specific person, is a pretty horrifying situation. Everywhere on the ship, there's Hork-Bajir and Taxons just fighting sailors that are so confused and don't know why they're under attack.
Here, let me give. Here's what I'm talking about. I'll give an old school reference that I'm sure people are familiar with. Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, the books, have many big battle scenes, like humongous battle scenes where you have characters spread out over castles and battlefields, and you're jumping in between characters, and all these things are happening. And there's many times that they have like things they have to do within the battles, like, oh, we've got to go, destroy these catapults, or we've got to find this person while everybody's fighting around them and bring them out. And the way that they're written is so easy to follow and exciting, where it's referencing the things happening around them but focusing on them. Where I felt like this book got too caught up in everything happening. It was almost like a Megamorphs book where it's trying to tell multiple perspectives, but we were supposed to still be stuck in Axe's perspective. And I felt like they didn't do a clear job of laying out exciting action for these characters to be impeded by. They just had action happening all around them for the sake of action, and they were jumping from one thing to the next, and their goals were changing, but also repeating themselves. They had to keep finding Visser Two. They had to keep finding... I just don't think it was... I think it was very muddled in its own writing. And I guess everyone can't be J.R.R. Tolkien. I get that. But, I just don't think it was handled as well as maybe the actual authors could have handled it.
No, I'm hearing you. I hear everything you say. And all it's doing is affirming my belief that you're just taking this all out of context.
No, I think I'm specifically taking it within the context of the book. The context is what I'm specifically talking about.
All right.
Not the overarching ideas, but the how it was executed.
Frankly, I love that this is just kind of Axe stumbling through this chaotic scene with a semi-vague goal, and Jake is too flustered. He's doing his own thing. He's trying to navigate his team. He's trying to do right by everybody, and he basically just tells Axe at one point, look, Axe, do whatever it takes to stop him. I know you'll find a way. I know you'll figure it out.
Whoa.
Do it.
I have the perfect reference to put this up against. Forget Lord of the Rings. Megamorphs number 3, Elfinger's Gift, where they have to go back in time and they're looking for Subvis or whatever, and they're having to find him on each battlefield while all this chaos and all this fighting is going on. Those were amazing. Like, you look at Henry VIII and that fight. Henry V? Henry VIII? I think it's Henry VIII. The Battle of Agincourt. You have them show up, and they know that they're looking for someone who looks a little cleaner than everybody else. And they start on the battlefield, and you get to see the horrors of medieval fighting right there. And they're stuck there. Then they get out of it. Then they go on the look again. They find them. And then they're chasing them. Then they chase them into a church. And then they're impeded by the villagers who try to kill them for being demons. And then they try to get up the bell tower. And then they get transported away. Like, there's a clear path that they go on in a progression of this chase. And you have almost the exact same story plot here, except it's all over the place. It's back and forth, and this is happening, and this is happening. And it's just not as well written.
They don't need to show the horrors of war at this point. Like you said, that book did it really well. This point, we're focusing on Axe and what he feels and what he thinks during this mission and how it's testing him and changing him. In particular, his dynamic with the team, especially with Jake. Now,
and real quick, US Dutch Kitty in the comments, she says, I know Michael Grant did say that they didn't give as much detail on the outlines for the ghostwriters as they should have, but it was such a crunch time between their own writing outside of Animorphs. I get that. We all know how these books were written, how they interact with the ghostwriters, and how some ghostwriters just got it and some didn't. And that's fine. But what we're doing here, what the whole point of this podcast was, is do these books still hold up individually? Let's review them. I think this book was, in whatever the circumstances around the ghostwriting or how well defined the outline was, I don't think this ghostwriter hit it home like some of the other have.
I'm going to read you another section here that I really enjoyed, and hopefully it'll speak for itself. So this is after the captain, the overall captain of the ship, a guy who is still just a regular human, he's betrayed by the admiral and shot, and he's dying, right? Mm-hmm. So he's pleading with the admiral and Chapman or the controllers. He says, "Please help, take me below deck. I'm one of you." "You're nobody," the controller shouted. "Your human host has served his purpose. He's dying. Save yourself if you can." The controller and the Hork-Bajir walked away. I approached. His eyes were beginning to glass over. Still, they showed fear. "I am not going to hurt you," I said. Then I saw the yerk struggling out of the man's ear. I let it happen. It would not get far. Awkwardly, I knelt by Captain Plummer's side. "What have I done?" he gasped. "I tried to fight it. I tried." "No one will blame you," I assured him. He looked down in fascination at what had been his stomach. "I'm dying." "Yes." He reached for one of my hands. I stayed with him until he was gone. That's this is borderline traumatic stuff that would have been really impactful, early game. And it's just it's amazing to think of where we've come, that, an event like this is something that apparently is glossed over so quickly that you think it's unimportant at this point.
Yeah, we've had horrible things happen in some of these Christian books, and I don't think it affects the overall plot. Maybe if we had one of the other Animorphs doing this role that Axe has, and seeing this guy die and his host body die, that probably would have been a more emotional, impactful scene on that person. But because it's Axe and he's more familiar with war and he's less affected by it, honestly, it doesn't really hit home like it would if one of the human characters were interacting in the scene. Again, I mean, they could have done something more Axe appropriate or something more like a yerk on Andalite or something like that. But just a human dying, I mean, he's kind of even in the scene, how you read it, he's kind of removed from it, and he's like, "Oh, this war sucks," But he doesn't. He just moves on to the next objective.
Okay,
he's very cold throughout it.
Okay, that didn't do anything for you. I gotcha. But I have another reading prepared that will hopefully, do some things for you. "Prince Jake," I said privately, "may I speak to you alone?" Jake sent the others to keep watch on Admiral Carrington and his yerk. Now or never. Time is running out. It is clear that no matter what the consequences to himself, Visser Two will not give up the name or location of the U.S. nuclear submarine. Without that information, we cannot act to halt its mission of destruction. And once that mission is accomplished, the rest of the plan will proceed as the Visser outlined. The slaughter will not end until the yerks control the planet. Jake held his shattered front paw off the ground. Blood pooled between us. "I know, Axe, but what can we do?" "I have an idea," I said. "It is a terrible thing I propose." A pause. "Go on, Axe." "I do not believe Visser Two will be stopped by anything less than the threatened annihilation of his own people. In this situation, here on Earth, the target would be the yerk pool." I waited, and I felt the shame warring with the desire, the need to win against the yerks, to thwart the conquest of one of my peoples. The words of the Andalite morning ritual came to me. The destruction of my enemies, my most solemn vow. Finally, Jake spoke. "Axe, I just can't allow that. I can't give the order. Billions of human lives versus 10 or 20,000, I said. He had to see, had to be made to see. It was the only way. I continued, many of whom are unwilling slaves, many of whom would welcome death for the sake of freedom. "No, Axe, I can't. You can't. What are you saying? Do you know what it'll do to us?" And at that moment, hearing the shock and horror in my prince's voice, I knew I had made a dreadful mistake. I never, ever should have laid such a burden on my friend, my ally. Never, ever should I have asked a human of such superior quality to make a decision that would undoubtedly risk the lives of everyone he had ever known. That would undoubtedly destroy his home, his neighborhood, his city. That would utterly decimate his every precious bond to sanity. I was an Andalite, a member of the species some unkindly but perhaps rightly have called the meddlers of the galaxy. I was an alien. I would carry the burden. I am sorry, Prince Jake, I murmured, and then I hit him alongside his head with the flat of my tail blade. So very sorry. Now, some of you probably need a tissue, and I'd understand that. This is heavy stuff. And feel free to emote, because...
Yeah, I'll go ahead and emote out of anger at how this author completely missed these characters with this scene. Because long have we gotten past the point where Axe questions Jake. We were past that point. He's resigned to follow Jake and believe that Jake's orders aren't just some kid talking to him. And I get that he's taking a different emotion in this part. He's saying, like, oh, okay, he has so much at stake. He can't make the right decision here. But I think that could have been handled a different way, that they still stuck to their characters. And who is this Jake who isn't willing to even think about the thought of killing these Yeerks in the Yeerk pool and what that might mean when, 5 books from now, he makes that decision and doesn't think twice about it? Like, why is he different then than he is now?
Because this is the first time it's happened?
Maybe, but they already were talking about this 2 books ago in Destroying the Yeerk pool. Destroying the Yeerk pool is no different than destroying the pool ship.
Because the initial plan here was that nobody's dying in this scenario. We're here to stop war. We're here to stop the deaths. And then Axe goes, hey, I got a plan. It's unfortunately the only plan we have, and it involves all your family and friends dying. And you know, Jake is obviously like, whoa, what? No, let's talk. That's not. We shouldn't be doing that. And Axe is like, oh my God, like I can't even believe what I just asked him or told him. Like, and that's what it's really about here, is that Axe realizes that this is the kind of burden that he shouldn't be putting on Jake. Jake told him, you know, I trust you to figure this stuff out, and you're going to do it. And Axe takes such a gamble here with what he does that it full-on alienates him from his team, really.
Yeah, and to the people in the chat right now, I understand it's not just about killing the Yeerks, it's about killing all the people who might be affected by the Yeerk pool imploding. I get that. But again, right or wrong, or however you want to handle it, we had a book 2 books ago where they literally excitedly talked about destroying the Yeerk pool and only didn't do it because of Cassie. That was the only reason they were stopped from doing it. And they were ready to do it without warning anybody or doing anything. They were going to just do it. So that should be more of the Jake we're seeing, even if that was handled by a different ghostwriter. That's already still been established. Why is he so hung up on it right now when they're in the thick of a battle versus before when they had time to think about it?
Well, I would say that, you know, Jake is really changing at this point. And like I said, I don't think would ever sacrifice so many people, you know, in order to accomplish goal. That's kind of where they're drawing the line, I suppose, right now, is at, you know, self-sacrifice, or not self, but sacrificing others for their goal here. They used to draw the line at morphing sentient creatures, people, you know, and we've seen them continually take steps further past what they're comfortable with. And that's the great part about Cassie's story arc, is hers is a character that just literally can't cope with doing that anymore. Jake is the guy who's supposed to be arranging all this stuff, and you know, not only does he have his friends' lives constantly on the line, now Axe tells him, like, oh, and by the way, your whole city, everything you do, everything you've fought for this entire time, all your family, friends, Tom, everybody, they die in this plan.
Okay, I don't want it to seem like we're glossing over the facts here. So in the chat, Daniel's commenting on the fact that, and I remember this as well, in the previous book that they had no issue doing that to the pool. It really would have only killed the people in the cages and the human controllers, host bodies.
Different situation.
So that's what they had. Yeah, that's why they were okay with it, because those people were already prisoners and probably wanted death anyway. So I agree. That's right. Destroying the city is a whole other thing. I still think that the way that they're talking to each other and the way that Axe handles the situation isn't completely in character, but I'll give it up that it's a different situation.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to convince you why this is so cool.
The death of millions is so cool.
It's rad, dude. But yeah, like, I could imagine this as, like, you know, if this were an animated cartoon show, this would have been, like, definitely 2-parter, if not 3-parter, with, you know, with Axe knocking Jake out here and kind of going rogue. It's the first time he's ever, like, taken that extra step to be like, you know, not only am I going to defy my prince, I have to actively stop my prince from stopping me from accomplishing this plan that he doesn't want me to do.
And I'll admit that in concept is cool. You know, this is what separates the warrior from the prince, someone who's willing to knock out their own prince when they think they're wrong and take what they believe is the high road or the road that'll win the war. It is very Andalite of Axe, what he does. But I don't think, again, it falls in line with how Axe has changed since he's been on Earth.
No.
Personally.
So, yeah, and here's another cool thing is, like, Axe sees what he has to do, right? And this resolution, as a reader, is not something I saw coming either, because I'll grant you that. It is a very strange wrap-up, where Axe is, like, literally the only thing we can do in this situation is try to convince a madman to call off an attack. This situation, unfortunately, can't be solved by fighting. It can't be solved by, well, it's going to have to be solved by talking, but it currently wasn't. But Axe sees the way to force his hand by saying that, okay, me and him, we're going to get in that jet, which he has Rachel and Marco help provide and prepare for him, even though Marco is like, look, dude, I know what you're doing and I'm not for it, but I don't have a plan, so I guess I gotta let you go and hope that you can take care of this. So Axe's plan is essentially to just get the madman in the jet with him and, like we've been talking about, threaten to blow up the Yerk pool, which huge consequences, obviously, if it were to happen. I think it would have been a cool cliffhanger, honestly, if they left it right there with a will they, won't they. But, you know, obviously it works. The Visser Two is convinced that apparently the one thing that the Yerks are afraid of course, is, you know, being responsible for the mass death of their main Yerk base, their Yerk pool on Earth, right? And he can't have that. So he does that. He calls off the attack. Which of course is a success for everyone, but really, even though the day is saved, this is one of those books where the real, like, problem or damage that's done is how it's changed the dynamic with our team. Axe has essentially put himself back in the corner, because you remember, his allegiances have been tested time and time again, and he's always come back to the team. He's always proved himself like a valuable resource, and now it's left us in a position where he straight up attacked his prince, defied orders, went rogue, saved the day, but also kind of threatened to murder everybody that our characters love. So
now I will give you real quick. I'll give you some props. Not you props, but this book props.
Give them to me.
I'll give it a gold star for if they're using this book in the Applegate's outline or whatever she gave the ghostwriter. If they're using this concept in the story to kind of reset everybody to how they were at the beginning of the series, that's kind of cool. I do like that they're kind of putting Cassie back into that moral high ground with what she does in the next couple books. I know a little bit about that, so I know they're going to do that specifically with her. And yeah, putting Axe back in that alien corner, like you said, I'm all for that. That's cool. So I'll give it a gold star for that.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. I'll pin it on my wall. And I mean, that's the book. So we're done with the official plotline of the book. It kind of cuts off, honestly, really abruptly with Axe and Visser Two still in the cockpit. So maybe in the next book, you know, there might be a blurb about how Axe, I'm assuming, crash lands the jet. No, he has to land it to guarantee Visser Two's safety. So there's got to be a bit in the next book about, you know, Axe landing the jet and getting out of there and then regrouping with everybody. And I'm assuming an awesome killer scene with Jake just, you know, stern dad look like, Axe, you son of a bitch. Like,
yeah. Well, if it's okay with you, since you already kind of know where I land, let me do my review real quick. Is that all right?
You want to do yours first? Sure.
Yeah. Just you can see how far you've swayed me. So I agree that a lot of my disappointment comes from how well the last book was written. I really, really enjoyed the last book. It's everything I wanted from the first reveal of their, identities to one of their parents, to the war starting out right, to Visser One's death. Man, it was such a kickoff to the end of the series. I loved everything about it. I was very hyped about it. I still give it a 4 out of 5 just because I thought, for the reasons I gave it, mostly because of its role in the end of the series and where we're going to get from there. But I loved the last book. I was riding high after it. So excited that right after I finished that book, I jumped into this one. And it was going from the highest of highs in this series for me to right back into the ghost-written. This book isn't trash. It's not horrible. But after how high the last one had me, this was a huge knockoff in quality for me. And it didn't progress the story. It didn't push forward where I'm so excited for them to get to. That's my fault and my own expectations. But I can't say that I enjoyed this book for the most part. Its action wasn't exciting for me. It had a lot of monotony and repetition. Axe's motivations and what he was doing. I didn't really care about his troubles in this book and what he was struggling with. It has some cool parts. It has some great moral fighting and philosophizing about end of the world and how war changes when you're about to win. That stuff's great. I loved it. But man, yeah, I'm really I really can't say that you completely convinced me that this book is more than a little bit of filler in the end game. So it's got some highs and everything, but I think I'm gonna have to give this. If we had a 2.5, I'd give it a 2.5, but I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 green jumpsuits.
That's nuts. It should at least be 3
I know.
From your perspective.
I almost gave it a 3, but I was really down on this book when I read it, and I don't think it ever climbed high enough to be more than just another ghostwritten book.
Okay, all right. Hey, well, I'm sorry that you didn't feel as strongly about this, because honestly, as soon as I finished this one, I was so ready to record and so excited, and I'm still there. I'm surprised I got as amped as I did tonight to talk about this, because I didn't think I could get there again. But just going through it again, oh man, there's so much good here. So right off the bat, I find it odd that you really enjoyed the book about the Animorphs coming out to their parents, but you didn't really enjoy the book about the Animorphs coming out to the U.S. government? This is essentially what happened here. Okay, it's no surprise I love this. This is a 5 out of 5 for me, obviously. But I'll tell you why. Character progression, especially with Axe, there's just more of Jake being on ghost mode for being a leader. In fact, I happen to know that the next book is all about, Jake's struggle with being the leader. I believe this is his final book where he makes up the decision, whether or not he's going to continue the fight as leader. But that's neither here nor there. We get, more of just tired, aged Jake being leader, even relying on Axe to do the right thing, and that's what drives this fracture and this character development that we're going to start seeing sliding into the end of the series. Lots of good character development with Cassie becoming kind of this, almost like a heel to the team, like she's being drug along on all their little antics, she's just so done with it, like we saw in the last book and the book before that. She's just she will do the bare minimum of what's necessary, but God, she feels bad about it. Rachel's not really particularly given much development, but she's the only one crazy enough to go along with anybody who's willing to escalate the craziness of their missions and plots. Hence, she's all for stealing the jet and doing all that stuff. Marco's great as the voice of reason. In particular, when he gets into little morality debates with Axe is really cool. I dig that stuff. Tobias was pretty well utilized as well on this kind of mission. I just thought good character interactions overall, and this was definitely the big kind of step up to a plot that I think we'd been needing for a little bit. I mean, the last book was awesome, like you said, and I gave that one a 5. But after reading this one, I feel like, oh man, that last one should have been a 4, and this should have been this is 5 worthy, right? This is what I want out of an Animorphs book. It's just so awesome, and for me, it will always be my favorite Axe book, and I think a 5 out of 5 ambiguously allied Andalites. Now let's see. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about from this thing? I mean, my whole pitch here is my justification as to why I think so highly of this book. So, what do you got now? What are your thoughts?
No, I think it could be. Our reviews could be different just based on what we look for in an Animorphs book. Like, my favorite Axe book is when he really accepts Jake as his prince and really feels like he's coming into human society and living amongst humans. That's what I care about in an Axe book is almost like what I care about with Superman. Like, when Superman doesn't feel like an alien, he starts to feel human, and even with all his crazy powers and everything. Those are the Axe books I love. Him talking about his race and how he's starting to see them as not perfect, and this a crazy action book where Axe is just coldly making cold Andalite decisions and about to end World War III. It's just, I don't know. I don't care about the stakes, and I care about the stakes in general with the plot, but within this book, just wasn't that. It's not what I want out of an Axe book. So it could just be that.
You bring up somewhat of a good point, I guess, in that I would have liked to see them do a slightly different character arc for Axe instead of just, is he Andalite or is he human? Like, what's going on there? I really wish they'd have given him more of like the Warriors kind of storyline where he starts to become, more like Elfangor was, which he certainly has done a lot of cool shit to prove himself throughout the series, but they've really put the focus on, like you said, this will he, won't they kind of back and forth between his alliances. And I just feel like that kind of pigeonholes him into this character arc that unfortunately maybe drags on a little long. I mean, that's been the focus of just about every single one of his books. Right?
What I would like to see with his arc, I think it would have been really interesting. They never would have done this because they wanted you to like Axe. But I would have really liked Axe coming to the conclusion that he's not one of them. And he flat out is like a double agent working for the Andalite interests and like in communication with the Andalite military and trying to, and sometimes undermining the Animorphs to progress the Andalite motivations. That would have been cool if he was like the entire time a double agent who had to reckon with the fact that he did like these humans and he was friends with them, but he was always going to put his own race first. That would have been a cool arc.
I could have seen him doing something like that, like maybe even when the Andalites return, or not return, but when the Andalites arrive on Earth, their full force, he does go back to them. That would be cool if he did that turncoat 180 and was like, "Oh, my Andalites, I'm back with you." And
which he does. He does a little bit.
Oh, sure.
He does a little bit from the books I've read.
Well, he tries to work with them, yeah. But if he had full on been like, "Oh no, I'm back in with you guys," turned tail on the Animorphs and made the Animorphs think he was a traitor, and then to only in the end of the series prove that no, I did this all for you guys from the beginning, and pull a Snape there. That'd have been a fine arc for him too.
I would have liked to see Axe at the end of the series sacrifice one of his fellow Animorphs for his own goals. That would have been a killer emotional punch. Like he lets Rachel die or something.
Cassie.
Not Rachel.
Cassie.
Yeah. No, Tobias. He lets Tobias die.
No, he can't let his Shorm die. That's the only reason I think that, they didn't do this whole, betrayal plot, is because he had Tobias's Shorm that he felt,
I know.
I'm with. So,
it would have been great if he betrayed the idea of Elfangor in trying to be more like Elfangor. That would have been an interesting, psychological plot. Yeah. Anyway.
They could have done a lot of things, but, boy... I love the book, and I'm glad that we had one of these where it was wildly differing opinions. I don't think that happens enough. That's kind of cool. So
yeah, especially the end of the series where we're supposed to be so hyped on everything. I was surprised to be kind of down this one. I'm extremely excited to read the next one. I'm going to jump into it probably tonight, and then we can get the next episode out faster. But
okay, yeah. So the next episode, by the way, is Animorphs number 47, The Resistance. This is a Jake book, and I feel like this one is the final series continuation book. After it, the countdown begins.
Yeah, and Jake books have always been my favorite. Every single one of my favorite books has been a Jake book. So
honestly, I have only read about half of this one because I didn't care to continue reading it once I started.
Ooh.
So okay. I look forward to finishing it.
So lower my expectations, maybe.
However, I do want to say that in the back of my book, they are already advertising for the Elemist Chronicles, which I find kind of odd.
Yeah, doesn't that land between the second to last book and the last book?
Yeah, and we're still minus 10 books away, so a little premature celebration in the end zone, but
I mean, they knew what they had. It's one of the best books in the series, so
yeah, exactly. Well, that's our review of Animorphs: The Deception. I really hope everybody involved comes back for more because stuff is about to get crazy.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I put anybody off with how I felt about this book, but we're still trying to be honest. That's the whole point of this podcast.
Walk it back.
No. That's the entire point. The entire point of this podcast is for me as a 31-year-old to look back at this book and be like, does this stand up with the entertainment and the books I enjoy right now that are targeted to my age? And that's unfair sometimes to these books because they were written for such a younger audience. But we don't care. That's the entire point of why we started this podcast. So sometimes we're going to disagree, and we're not going to put on rose-colored glasses to look back at this stuff. So
there you go. Yeah, that explains it perfectly. So yeah, come back next time. Let's hit the plugs.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed this podcast, this is your first time checking us out. Probably not, but if you are, we appreciate anything that you can do for us. So we have a Patreon, patreon.com/Thoughtspeak. You can go check out there, donate to the show. That helps us pay for the cost of the show, our website, our server, all these fancy webcams and everything we have going on. That helps us progress the show and make it bigger and better. And we really appreciate everyone who contributes on Patreon, and we give them a plug every show because of it. If you can't give us any money, or if you just don't want to, or if you just don't agree with the idea and concept of money in general, you can go on iTunes or wherever you listen to our podcast and leave us a review.
Give us reviews and ratings. Those are a fine currency for us.
They're great. They bring more people to the show, and we just had a redo on iTunes where we lost a bunch of ratings and reviews. So we appreciate anything you can go up there. It helps out the show an insane amount. So we appreciate anything. Wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a review, leave us a rating. It's greatly appreciated. You can check out our website, thoughtspeakcast.com, for all the latest episodes and news and kind of just some more blog-type material. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, @Morphcast. Just if you Google Thoughtspeakcast or Thougtspeak Podcast, you'll find us pretty quick. And so, just interact with us anywhere on there.
Check us out. Give us some likes, comment, share us with your friends. Be like, yo, check out this book review podcast. It's funny. Whatever. We enjoy interacting with all of you, and this live streaming is really fun. Can't wait to continue doing it in the future. Like Coleman said, please join our Patreon. We need you. That said, we look forward to the future with all of your lovely faces, and I've been your host, Mitchell.
And I've been Coleman.
And I'm thinking we'll see you next time for another amazing Thoughtspeak. Later, folks.